All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, ERP Selection Masterclass, Essential Steps for Manufacturing Business Owners. I'm Ashley Limbers, and I'm the marketing lead here at Encompass Solutions, and I'm thrilled to be your moderator for this informational session. For those of you who might be new to Encompass Solutions, let me take a moment to introduce our company. Encompass Solutions is an Epicor premier partner for ERP solutions, supporting businesses of all sizes in the manufacturing industry. Our mission is to empower organizations to enhance their operational efficiency, streamline data integration, and optimize supply chain processes. With our team of dedicated experts like our speaker, Jeremy Miller, we have been successfully helping companies implement ERP solutions tailored to their unique needs. Our commitment to excellence and customer satisfaction has earned us the trust of numerous clients, enabling them to achieve seamless data integration and drive sustainable growth. Now let's turn our attention to our speaker, Jeremy Miller. Please join me in giving Jeremy a warm welcome. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be emailed to you. Remember, this webinar is designed to be interactive, and we encourage your active participation. Feel free to type your questions in the Zoom question box, and we'll address them during the QA session following the presentation. There is also a survey for you to complete at the end of today's event. Now, without further ado, let's dive right in. Over to you, Jeremy.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Ashley, and hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Just a quick introduction on who I am. My name is Jeremy Miller. I'm a senior territory manager with Encompass Solutions, and I've been in technology sales in one way or another for about 17 years. Of that time, I have about 12 years of experience in ERP software, and most of it specifically focused on manufacturing. So I've worked with literally hundreds of manufacturing companies that have discovered it's time to consider a new ERP system, and I've helped walk them through that process. And I'd imagine many of you are in that same boat today, which is why you're here. So I'm excited to share some of what I've learned with you. We'll go ahead and get started. So today we're going to talk a bit about what an ERP system is, how you would go about assessing your needs for an ERP system, the process of researching and evaluating vendors, what the vendor selection process and implementation might look like, and then a little bit about some best practices and lessons learned. We'll start out with a poll question from Ashley. And the question is, what is your company's current ERP status? If you could go ahead and choose one on the screen. The options are considering implementing ERP, already using an ERP, evaluating new ERP solutions, or not using ERP and no immediate plan. Go ahead and answer on the screen if you would. All right, we'll give everybody a couple more seconds to go ahead and answer the poll. All right. Looks like we've got a few people evaluating new ERP solutions. That's exciting. So hopefully this will definitely be helpful for you today. All right, we can go ahead and move on. All right. So what is an ERP system? As you can see on the screen, an ERP system, or enterprise resource planning, is a comprehensive software solution that integrates and manages core business processes and data across an organization. Essentially, if you think about a lot of manufacturing businesses, most will have an accounting system, maybe QuickBooks. Then maybe you've got a CRM system on the side. There's an inventory system in place, possibly, but those systems likely don't talk to each other. And then inevitably, you've got a bunch of spreadsheets or Google Sheets kind of spread out all over. Different people have them on their computers and things like that, and just kind of spread out all over. So the goal of an ERP system is to basically bring the information in all those different areas and put it into a single system. And then not only have all that information in one place, but take it to the next level of allowing you to report on the information, make quick decisions on the information, or possibly better yet, maybe allow the system to make some decisions for you. But at the very core, an ERP system is designed to be the same version of the truth for everybody in the organization. So we're going to talk about some of the benefits of an ERP system in manufacturing. This is an overall list of some of the benefits that can bring to your business. And we're going to go through a few of these. We'll talk a little bit about streamlining operations, real-time visibility, and things like that. So we can go ahead and go through a couple of those. We're going to talk about the role of an ERP in manufacturing. And the first one we want to talk about is streamlining operations. So number one is how are you going to make things in your organization work better? As I mentioned before, getting all that information out of these disparate systems and spreadsheets and out of people's heads. This is what we sometimes refer to as silos of information. We want to take all of that and get that into a central system that everybody's working from. And then once you have that information in one place, you have the ability to standardize how you do things and maybe automate steps that might be redundant or time consuming. All of this ultimately helps with communication, both internally and then also externally with your customers and suppliers. Efficiency obviously is a big one as well. As the manufacturing companies grow, we've seen this so many times. We've got people that are so creative and so adaptive. And as the company grows, you adapt, right? You change, you add tracking, you add a process here or there, you add people, and that all can work for a while, but eventually you can kind of become overrun with information in so many different places and residing with so many different people that all those little things you did to adapt along the way suddenly help start to become a bit of a hindrance. You got maybe a simple spreadsheet that Mark in production put together to track inventory. That spreadsheet suddenly turns into a behemoth with dozens of tabs and formulas and tables that only Mark knows how to manage. Meanwhile, somebody else has started a spreadsheet of their own for inventory in their department. That spreadsheet doesn't match up with Mark's spreadsheet. And then what happens if Mark goes on vacation? So having one version of the truth in an ERP system makes everybody more efficient. There's no more searching for the latest version of Mark's spreadsheet. Instead, everybody knows where to go to get real-time information so that good decisions can be made quickly and accurately. And of course, this is just one example, this inventory example, right? This can happen in any department across the manufacturing company. It happens all the time. People start to use their own tools to do their own job better when there might be systems that we can utilize in the overall business to make things more efficient. Next one is increasing productivity. ERP systems really can play a pivotal role in helping you increase what you're doing from a production standpoint, from saving time, automating mundane tasks, to alerting you to issues within the business. ERP systems help you achieve really operational excellence. They help reduce costs. They help enhance customer satisfaction, and obviously, ultimately help drive profitability, which is why we're all here, right? Every improvement that you can make in a manufacturing business that increases efficiency and productivity is an opportunity to send profitability right to the bottom line. So let's talk a little bit about what conducting a needs assessment would look like. You've kind of gone through this process. You start to feel like there are maybe some changes that you can make. What does that process actually look like? It starts out pretty organically. And if you're here today, maybe you're already on this path. It sort of happens with that everyday thought of, oh man, there has to be a better way for us to do this, right? That's kind of that acknowledgement of those pain points in your current process. And suddenly you start to take a good hard look at how you're doing things today, identifying and frankly probably starting to admit that what you're doing isn't working so well anymore, and you kind of start to consider alternatives. Part of that's considering your overall business objectives and making a step towards making a change. And you need to make sure that you are both meeting the needs of the business today, but also planning for what might come in the future. You have to consider the investment a project like this will take, not just in dollars alone, but in the time commitment of your team, right? Ultimately, the question has to be answered. Are we willing to go through the process of making sure our business is set up for the future? Are we ready to do that? And that's really sort of the beginning of deciding that it's time to go through a needs assessment for an ERP system. So then let's talk about, once you've decided this and once you've gone through that assessment and say, yep, we need to start taking a look at this, what does vendor selection and implementation actually look like for an ERP system? So it's time to take a look at the vendors available in the market, right? And most people will start with just a good old Google search, which is great, but there's a lot of things you want to be aware of. Software functionality and how it works for your business, obviously, very important. The next thing people always think about is price, but those are really only two parts of the equation of choosing an ERP system and vendor. There might be a lot of companies out there in the market that can functionally do what you need, and maybe you can afford them. But what about the strength of the company you're about to partner with? You want to make sure they're going to be around for a long time, right? Make sure that they're a good cultural fit for how you do things at your company. You want to ask questions about how successful they've been at implementing their software with companies like yours. Understand if they have the structure to support you. And then also ask questions about technology. Are they on a cutting edge platform? Are they investing in the product? What's the plan for the product going forward? What's the product roadmap? Again, there's a lot more to consider than just functionality and price when you get into a vendor selection process. So first things first, you'll probably want to work with a vendor that has expertise in manufacturing. It's pretty easy to get caught up in brand names when you start looking at software. If you watch golf, you probably see some ERP vendors that have commercials on Saturdays and Sundays watching golf, and it's pretty easy to get caught up in that. But if you take a step back and think about your business, is that software, that name brand software, are they really experts in manufacturing? What is their reputation? Do they have the ability to support and implement the solution successfully? How long has the solution been around, and what's the roadmap for the solution? And does the solution meet all of your needs today and still have the ability to grow with you for the future? So you're going to want to probably cast a wide net early in your process, but really think about who's got that manufacturing industry expertise. One thing I do want to mention at this point is when to engage vendors in this process. Like there's a lot of information out there that says when companies typically get vendors involved in the actual evaluation. The reality is there's probably really no perfect time to do this. But one thing I will say is that an experienced vendor with a salesperson that's been around for a while and understands the industry can really help you cut through a lot of noise. You know, most people will go through an evaluation of ERP software maybe a couple times in their career, right? This is not something that you're doing every day. So not understanding the landscape and the market is completely understandable. And I know engaging with salespeople is not everybody's idea of a good time, unfortunately, but our job is to help you make an informed decision and help you navigate the landscape. If your company isn't a good fit for our software, I'm going to tell you that. There's no reason for me to continue to push with you if what you do is not a good fit for what we do. And I might even be able to give you some advice on who you should take a look at. I can also tell you that there's been multiple times in my career where I've helped a manufacturing company actually develop the list of requirements for their ERP search. They reached out early. I had an opportunity to chat with them and was able to work with them to create the list that they ultimately shared with other vendors. So like I mentioned early on, I've worked through this process with hundreds of companies. Well, most people only do this a couple times in their career. So I would encourage you to utilize every resource you have available to you, including the salespeople. All right, looks like we've got another poll question from Ashley. And this question is, what are your primary considerations when selecting an ERP vendor? The options are cost and licensing model, scalability and flexibility, industry-specific expertise, user-friendly interface, and customer support and service. Go ahead and place your vote on our poll. All right, looks like we've got a lot of answers coming in. Looks like cost and licensing and industry-specific expertise are popular ones. All right, poll has ended. Yeah, it looks like cost and licensing models and industry-specific expertise were the big winners. All right, we'll go ahead and move on then. Appreciate everybody's participation there. So again, now once you've identified those requirements and once you've started to speak with vendors, as I mentioned, you'll want to consider their expertise and their experience. How do they align with your goals? How well do they understand what you're trying to accomplish? And how do they fit with helping you accomplish that? What is their understanding of the industry, and do they understand the challenges faced by the industry and your organization specifically? Very important to make sure that you're strategically aligned with the vendor that you work with. Next, how does the actual solution fit? So this is the functionality, right? Does it check all those functional boxes that are important to you? Does it allow the flexibility and scalability that you require? Has it been successfully implemented in other companies like yours? And will you have the chance to speak with them? So do they have references that they can share with you that you can actually talk with, that have gone through this experience and can say, yeah, this vendor has been a good company to work with, and they would recommend to you. Next, we'll talk a little bit about value delivery. How are they going to actually deliver value to your organization? Do they understand the unique priorities of what you have going on? Do they understand your buying process? Do they understand what a successful project looks like to you? And are they prepared to deliver an experience that will help you actually transform your organization? These are conversations that you should be having throughout the selection process with the vendor to make sure that you're partnering with the right organization. Collaboration and partnership is the next one. And this is an interesting one because I don't think it always looks like people think it's going to look when they start a project, right? When it comes to projects like this, sometimes collaboration means that the vendor is taking all of the pain points that you talked about, all your desires and all your suggestions, and they're helping you map that process into the ERP system. That's an important part of this, right? But sometimes collaboration means a vendor pushing you a little bit on your process, pushing you a little bit on how you do your business. Sometimes it means the vendor educating you on industry best practices, right? You know your business better than anybody else, but the reality is an ERP software consultant probably works with dozens of manufacturing companies every year. It's their job to understand industry trends and best practices. And the reality is a good ERP software implementation isn't just the installation of software. It's really a business process consulting partnership that leaves you with not just a successful implementation, but actually a more efficient way of running your business. So don't just think about this as I'm choosing a company that's going to implement a piece of software. Think about who is this company that I'm partnering with and how are they going to help us become a more efficient business overall. Next up is change management. This goes back again to how are you going to work with that vendor? It's super important to remember that changes are going to happen. And this is another huge reason, again, why choosing the right partner is so important. You can do all of your homework, go through the evaluation of several vendors, see all kinds of demos, create a comprehensive list of requirements, have hours of discussion about how the implementation process will look. And I can still guarantee you that new things will come up and changes will be needed during the implementation process. It's just inevitable. You're continuing to learn more about the software as you go through this implementation process. The vendor continues to learn more about you and what's important to you and your business and how you operate. The consultant starts to interject some best practices or maybe a new idea. And suddenly you're zigging when you thought you were going to zag in the implementation process, right? And this is why communication is so important. This is why having that good back and forth collaboration is so important to making sure that you're successful. You're going to have to understand what is the change, why is it happening, and what else does it affect upstream and downstream. If you have a good collaborative relationship with your vendor, change management is just a super normal part of the process and doesn't have to be painful at all. Long-term success obviously is very important too, right? It's super easy to get bogged down in kind of the immediacy of the project, the pain points that you came into this trying to solve. And while those are obviously super important, you have to consider what long-term success looks like. You have to consider how the vendor is going to play into that long-term success, right? Is the software designed for the long term? Is the company investing in improvements in the software? Do they understand the industry? Will they be with you in the future when your business changes? Success a year from now, maybe when you've just gone live on your new system, probably looks a lot different than success in year 3, year 5, year 6, and down the road. And the vendor that you partner with should be able to talk with you about what that looks like, what that long-term success looks like, what that cadence is going to look like, and how you're going to work together. All right, couple of key factors here. Again, there's a lot to consider in a manufacturing ERP evaluation. This isn't just financial management software. It's not just inventory software. Those are part of it, obviously, but there's a lot more at play, right? Functionality is important, both for today and the future, but obviously you also want to take a look at long-term costs, understand total cost of ownership, understand the model of how the software is going to be delivered to you. You want to understand, or excuse me, you want to make sure that you're comfortable with the vendor and their ability to both implement the solution successfully in your business to meet your needs today, but also make sure that they're able to support you for the long term as well. So let's talk a little bit then about that implementation process and what implementation success looks like. And it really starts with planning, right? You have to make sure that the process, the timeline, and the budget all fit your objectives. It's also important that you understand and identify the resources from your team that will need to be dedicated to the ERP implementation and how much time they will need to dedicate to the project. If there's one area that I can say that we often find that companies have not put enough thought into the process ahead of time, it's how much time their team is going to need to dedicate to the evaluation. So that's a very important part. You want to make sure that you've got a team on your side that's ready to go through this process. On top of that, you've got data, right? Information that needs to get into the new system that you can start transacting against. So you have to make sure that the information going into the new ERP system is clean and ready for your new solution for you to start transacting with. You have to make sure your people will be ready to use the solution once you go live on the system. And you have to make sure that when you go live, you'll have support from the vendor as all of these new processes are being put into place. So support when you go live and following the implementation is very important as well. Let's talk a little bit about some common challenges that we've seen through implementations and some of the sort of lessons learned. So the first one is inefficient planning and preparation. This certainly isn't designed to scare anybody, but again, you have to give proper attention to planning for this process. And I would really encourage you to lean on the vendor you've chosen to work with on this, right? Really ask a lot of questions about what other companies have done to ensure a successful implementation, get feedback on what types of people should be involved and how much time they will need to commit to the implementation, and really start to establish a cadence of communication and feedback with the vendor so that everybody is marching in the same direction. Really define what those project objectives are, and then make sure that as you go through it, you're in constant communication with the vendor about where we're at in the process and any changes that might need to be made. The next common thing we see is in data management and cleansing. You know, an ERP software implementation is a great time to clean up your data. You've probably got duplicate parts on spreadsheets or different areas of your business. It's a good time to get rid of those duplicate parts. It's a good time to delete vendors that you don't work with anymore so that you're starting out with a clean slate of vendors. It's really the old saying, right? Garbage in, garbage out. Try to make sure that the data you're starting with in your new ERP system is clean and ready to go. The next one is customization and complexity. And you know, it's funny, customization has kind of become a dirty word in the ERP world. And the reason is that it can really lead to a lot of extra time and cost, both during an implementation and just in the long term. And it can really make things more difficult for you in the future. We would really encourage you to try to utilize best practices and try to adopt as much of the standard out of the box functionality of your new ERP system as possible. Now, the good news is customization is a lot different than it was, say, 20 years ago. The most modern ERP systems should be on new enough technology that they can provide some tools that allow you to make personalizations in the software. So you're not worrying about changing source code, you're just changing things on screens and things like that. And being able to do those type of personalizations that are allowed within the tool set of the software itself won't make your life too difficult in the long run. Those are the kind of things that you can maintain through updates and upgrades. But you'll definitely want to work closely with your vendor on what that looks like and make sure that you're on the same page as far as what the future plan is with those type of customizations. The next one is resource allocation and project management. And I talked about this a little bit earlier, but making sure you have the right people and having the right amount of time for those people dedicated to the project is super important. This is not the type of software installation where it just gets installed, we flip a switch, turn it on, and suddenly the next day everybody's using it. You need to be prepared for your team to spend a lot of time on the software implementation aside from the time that they spend with the vendor consultant. Your team is going to likely be given weekly tasks, weekly milestones to hit that are going to be need to be done independently. And if proper time and attention isn't given to working through those tasks, it can lead to missing timelines, or worse, if it happens regularly, it can really lead to missing your targeted go live date. All right, so you have chosen a vendor, you've implemented the software, you've gone live on the software, you're humming along, and now you're using the software. Let's talk about some tips for ongoing system maintenance. You know, having an ERP system is not just a set it and forget it type of proposition. Most ERP vendors today are doing updates twice a year, and they're probably doing patches in between those updates to improve performance of the system. So it's incredibly important to keep up with those updates because they have a lot to do with how well the vendor can support you going forward and in the future. Now, the reality of the ERP industry today is that most companies who choose an ERP system choose to go with a cloud solution. So those updates and upgrades are kind of handled for you as part of your subscription and part of the process. And so that becomes fairly straightforward if you do choose to go with the cloud solution. But whether you do choose to go with the cloud solution or not, hopefully you do commit to those regular updates and upgrades. If you don't, you can often run into issues down the road where you aren't able to do updates anymore. So you want to make sure that you commit to doing that. And really, those are great opportunities to consider other maintenance activities as well. If your ERP vendor does an update, maybe there's some new functionality that you want to take advantage of. Obviously that's a time where you're going to want to engage with the consulting team again to probably help you work through that. Or maybe it's just a good time to look through your master data and do some cleaning, clean up some processes, whatever it might be. I would absolutely encourage you to have a regular cadence of maintenance and process improvement. And this will really make for a good long-term relationship with your ERP system. All right, a little bit of a recap here. We've gone through a lot today. Like we said, ERP systems play a really important role in manufacturing companies of all sizes. And we work with companies every day that are growing, and that growth has caused them to need to look at some new software. And an ERP system can really help you increase efficiency, optimize your processes, and promote collaboration and a commitment to best practices while still ensuring a foundation for long-term success, making sure that you've got that technology platform to grow with you in the future. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Ashley. We can take some questions.
Awesome, great information, Jeremy. We'll go ahead and take time for questions. Just a reminder, please be sure to type those into the question box, and we'll wait a few seconds here to see if we have any questions come in. All right, so it looks like we have a couple questions so far. How long does it take to go through a typical software evaluation?
That's a great question. It really varies quite a bit, right? Our view as a vendor into the timing of that process really starts when you engage with us. So I would say that, a typical evaluation process that we see is probably anywhere from, we'll say 2 to 3 months, right? Likely there's probably a few weeks ahead of that the company has been doing some type of research, looking into ERP systems before they engage with the vendor. But once you engage with the vendor, I would say 2 to 3 months is probably a typical time frame. And really what that process looks like is you're going to go through an introductory period. You're going to go through some discovery. We're going to want to get to know your business a little bit better, overall business objectives and things like that. We'll dig into some functional discovery to really understand what's important to you from a functional standpoint. Then we'll go through a demonstration process. We'll talk about what implementation looks like, and then ultimately, go through the process of the fine print and getting contracts signed. So like I said, typically we're looking at about a 2 to 3 month time frame on that. But there's probably a little bit of time ahead of that companies are spending doing research as well.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was an excellent question. We have two questions that are pretty similar, so I'll read both of them. The first one is, you may have mentioned this, but what ERP software do you implement for manufacturing? And then the other question is, could you tell us about your ERP software or your ERP offering?
Sure.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Encompass Solutions, we are a certified partner with Epicor. And Epicor is an organization that is about $1 billion in revenue. I think they're focused, one of their largest focuses is on manufacturing, and they've been in the manufacturing space for a long time. So when we talked earlier about making sure that your vendor is manufacturing focused. That's one of the things that's really great about Epicor for this marketplace is it really is the singular focus of our software. Epicor was built from the ground up, purpose built for manufacturing. So all of the functionality is built around that. You'll find a lot of other ERP vendors out there that work with manufacturing companies. But the reality of those systems a lot of times is that they are basically maybe a financial management platform with add-ons, third-party add-ons and things like that to be able to round out the solution and work specifically with manufacturing. But with Epicor, you have a system that was purpose-built from the ground up for manufacturing. Additionally, Encompass Solutions, as an organization, has been implementing Epicor for over 20 years. So our singular focus in the ERP space is around manufacturing companies and implementing Epicor software within manufacturing companies. So great question.
Well, it looks like we have you have answered all of the incoming questions. So it looks like we've covered all the questions today. Is there anything else, Jeremy, that you wanted to cover before we go?
I really just wanted to let everybody know. First of all, thank you so much for joining us and thank you for participating. We do have a free guide called 7 Ways ERP Can Transform Your Manufacturing Business. You can go ahead and scan these QR codes on your screen. The first one is the guide, like I said, 7 Ways ERP Can Transform Your Manufacturing Business. And the other one is if you're interested in scheduling a discovery call with us. If you'd like for myself or one of my colleagues to spend some time with you, get to know your business. Maybe you're starting this process of kind of evaluating what's important from an ERP standpoint to you, and you want to start to talk with an industry expert on how to go through this process. We'd love to have a conversation with you and just understand what is important to you and see if we can help you out. Again, as I mentioned earlier, if our solution is not a good fit for you, we will absolutely tell you. And if I can tell you a better direction to go, we will, but we want to get an opportunity to chat with you. So you can scan either one of these QR codes and download the guide or schedule a discovery call with us. Or if you like some old-fashioned reach out, feel free to give us a call or shoot us an email. You can check out our website at encompass-inc.com and see what we're about and who we work with. And again, if you're interested in scheduling a discovery call, you can go ahead and scan that QR code or reach out to us by telephone or email.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We look forward to you joining us for our next event. See you guys next time.